This month for Sneep Snorp Club, I made Paper Leaf Sheep and Paper Sea Bunny, and today I'm going to tell you everything I know about them while I make the paper crafts. We're starting off with the Sea Bunny paper craft pattern, and in preparation for this video, I did lots of Sea Bunny reading, Sea Bunny investigation, Sea Bunny research, all of that kind of stuff, because really going into the project, all I knew was, oh, I see this guy on TikTok all the time. Sea Bunny is so cute. I love him. We all love him. Sometimes he looks like Pikachu. This is so great. But I had to do actual reading about Sea Bunny, and I found that Sea Bunny's legal government name, the scientific name of Sea Bunny, is Girona parva. And this name, Girona, actually is kind of a Latinized version of the name of a female character from this 13th century Icelandic saga. She is the wife of one of the leading characters and is described as this beautiful, smart, proud, sometimes headstrong woman. I will admit I did not read the entire saga in preparation for this video, but I just thought that was a little interesting tidbit, and what that means, what that description means for our friend Sea Bunny, I don't entirely know, but I think it's great. Anyway, there are 22 species within the Girona genus, and they pretty much all kind of resemble the sponges that they feed on. Sea bunnies come in a variety of different colors. Most commonly, they'll be orange or kind of a yellow-orange color. I saw a few photos of them that actually made them look like this blood orange color. Very cool. But apparently they get their colors from the toxic sponges that they actually feed on. And when sea bunnies eat these sponges, they basically absorb both the toxins and the pigments of the sponge that they're feeding on. So that's how they come in all these different colors, and they absorb these toxins and basically use them as protection against, unfortunately, Sea Bunny does have natural predators, snail and fish, as far as I know. Very sad, but what can you do? But Sea Bunny uses these toxins that they absorb from the sponges they eat as kind of protection. And more about the coloration of Sea Bunny. Interestingly enough, they do also apparently, they can be found in brown and green colors, which I thought was very interesting. I looked and looked and looked for photos, but I never saw a green one. Apparently, sea bunnies mostly eat sponges, but they might also use a little tongue-like organ that they have called, I don't know if it's radula or radula. I'll find out later, perhaps in the comments if someone wants to share. But they use this tongue-like organ basically to scrape algae off of surfaces, and they'll also eat algae, so I don't know, when I think of algae, I think green, so maybe that's where green ones come from. But most people know sea bunnies for the little white sea bunnies with black ears and black spots and the little black and white kind of bunny tail that they have. Apparently sea bunnies, I see them at least all over TikTok and on Reels now, but apparently they blew up overnight on Japanese Twitter in 2015. They really had a moment. I don't know why, but hey, love to see it. Thank you, Twitter. But I was talking about the different colors of sea bunnies, and apparently, so there are lots of different sea slugs, and in the Girona genus, while there are only 22 species that we know of right now that have been named and identified, it's suspected that there are many, many, many more that we haven't found yet. They're so tiny, and so many of them do happen to look very similar to one another, an example of which is Girona pardus, which is found off the coast of Southern California, which is very exciting to me because I live off the coast of Southern California, but they're found off the coast of Southern California all the way up to the Sacramento Reef, and apparently they look very similar to sea bunnies. They are suspected to possibly be the same species, who knows, but the California sea bunny, Girona pardus, is 3 times as long as sea bunnies are when fully grown, so maybe not. Maybe they're cousins though, I don't know. But I was talking about the white and black coloration that a lot of people know sea bunnies for. Interestingly enough, these white and black sea bunnies have only been observed off the coast of Japan. I just think that's so interesting. It probably, like, their coloration has to do with the types of sponges and algae they actually eat, so it must have something to do with the actual food source that a lot of sea bunnies around there are consuming, but I just thought that was so interesting. More about sea bunnies' legal, confidential, classified government name, Joruna parva. So the second part, parva, which refers to the specific species sea bunny, the word parva is Latin for small, which it just made me laugh when I read that, because I was just kind of like, okay, like, of course they're small. Surely all sea slugs are teensy tiny little bitty guys. I was wrong. Sea slugs, rather, they can be as tiny as 4 millimeters long, which is much smaller than a sea bunny, or they can be as long as 3 feet. Huge! That is a sea beast. Yeah, the 3-foot long sea slug is the black sea hare, or the California black sea hare. I think on average they're maybe 2 feet long, but they have been recorded up to 3 feet long, which is just very amazing. I wish sea bunnies could be that size. I think when I see little fan cams of them and stuff online, I just think a sea bunny is like probably like the size of a garden snail, a little slug maybe. No, they're much smaller than that actually. An adult sea bunny on average will only be 1 to 2.5 centimeters long, so less than an inch long. They would fit right on part of your fingertip. They're just teensy tiny. But speaking of putting a sea bunny on your fingertip, don't. Sea bunnies are toxic. I mentioned before, of course, their food source is toxic sponges, and they absorb the toxins of the sponges they consume, so sea bunnies are toxic. Probably don't touch them. I was a little bit unclear, though, if sea bunnies, if they're toxic to the touch, or if they would have to be consumed to be toxic. I wasn't totally sure, but I read that one of their predators, marine snail also has a radula that they use to scrape off the toxic outer part of sea bunny. Very sad. Okay, moving on to leaf sheep papercraft now, but I haven't gotten even close to the end of my notes about sea bunny, so very sorry to leaf sheep, but I'm going to keep talking about sea bunny while I work on leaf sheep papercraft. So, a bit about the life cycle of our friend sea bunny. Sea bunnies live a few months to maybe a year, ideally, of course. Since they live for such a short period of time, though, this also means that they may live in relative isolation, so they may or may not come across another sea bunny to mate with. So sensory organs are very important for sea bunnies in order to help them, of course, find food like their sponges, but also it helps them to find other sea bunnies so they can mate. Their little bunny ears that they have, they're not actually ears, they are what are called rhinophores, which are a type of sensory organ that help them find food and other sea bunnies. But rhinophores are specifically a type of sensory organ called a chemosensor, meaning that they create biological responses for the sea bunny in reaction to chemical substances that it senses in the water. The actual name rhinophore essentially means that it functions as a detector of smell. Rhino coming from nose and phore meaning to bear. So rhinophore sort of means to bear a nose. Well, for sea bunnies, it kind of means to bear a nose on their head, and 2 of them. Sea bunny rhinophores are particularly fluffy looking, and they have a greater surface area as part of why they look so fluffy, and having more surface area means that they're able to be even more receptive to smells, so wonderful news for our very best friend, Sea Bunny. I read that most, in quotation marks, most Dorid nudibranches can retract their rhinophores back beneath their skin in a little pocket under the skin in order to actually protect the rhinophores from being chomped off by passing fish. Unbelievable. If you're a fish and you're listening right now, stop doing that to sea bunnies. Please don't do that. But I didn't read anywhere that sea bunnies are definitely able to do this. Again, what I read said most Dorid nudibranches are able to retract their rhinophores. Sea bunnies are a type of Dorid nudibranch, but I didn't find any confirmation that they are known to retract their rhinophores in this fashion. I choose to believe that they can, however. Another one of their bunny-like little characteristics is their fluffy little tail toward the back end of the sea bunny. And of course, much like the little bunny ears aren't actually ears, they're more of noses, the fluffy bunny tail that our friend Sea Bunny has are actually their gills. Okay. I had to disappear for a moment because I was about to launch into reciting everything I know about the external gills that sea bunnies use to breathe through. And I was going to talk so much about how the word nudibranch translates to naked gills, referring to the external exposed nature of their gills as opposed to gills being internal, like a fish or a shark like myself. Only to discover that I have been pronouncing nudibranch wrong the entire time. Anyway, now that I know how to pronounce nudibranch at the end of my video about sea bunnies and leaf sheep, another fun fact about sea bunnies is that they're actually hermaphrodites. This means that they produce both sperm and egg cells, so that when they meet another sea bunny, both are able to exchange one another's sperm in order to fertilize each other's egg cells. And something interesting that I read related to this was that sea bunnies are noted to only be found where there are plentiful food sources, which, hey, who isn't found where there's a plentiful food source? Am I right? But for sea bunnies, it's thought that they're found where there's very plentiful food sources, at least partly because it is, quote, calorically expensive, or it requires lots and lots of energy in order for them to constantly be producing both sperm and egg cells on a constant basis. Y'all, I got so excited to talk about sea bunnies and had too much to share, and now I have almost no time to talk about leaf sheep, even as I finish the paper craft right in front of us. But what I can tell you about leaf sheep is that they are also a type of sea slug, just like sea bunnies. However, they are not a nudibranch, which was very confusing for me because I thought nudibranch was almost interchangeable with the term sea slug, but it isn't. As I've discovered, a nudibranch is actually a type of sea slug. And here are the finished leaf sheep and sea bunny paper craft patterns. I'm so proud of how they turned out. Leaf sheep in particular was a huge challenge, but I love how he turned out. And all the names that you see scrolling by right now are members of Sneep Snorp Club, who I would like to say a quick thank you to. Your support means the absolute world. And in the time I have left, I'm going to quickly tell you one more thing about leaf sheep that's so cool. So they're not a nudibranch. Like we said, they are a different type of sea slug called a sacoglossa, meaning solar-powered sea slug. Basically, this means that a leaf sheep sea slug, eats algae and retains the chloroplast found in the algae through a process called kleptoplasty, meaning they're a thief of plastids or chloroplasts. Basically, this is an indirect form of photosynthesis, and they're one of the only creatures that can actually carry out photosynthesis without being a plant. Okay, bye!